May 8th, 2025. And the CBC's response to Carney's meeting with Trump seems a little dishonest. I'll show you some footage of what they're saying is a win for Carney. And the win is him mouthing the word never over and over again. So I don't know if that's not a win for me, but okay, CBC, it's very interesting. We'll show you that. The United Kingdom is becoming more like Pakistan with blasphemy laws. What? Somebody was burning a Quran, which isn't a nice thing to do, but also if you are thrown in prison for it, that's worse, I think. So we'll look at that. Update on the Epstein list. Pam Bondi's saying that the FBI is vetting the Epstein list still, and it's still coming. So I feel like we're being kept on the hook a little bit, right? Like we're a fish, and that's the bait, and we're keeping that hook firmly in our cheek. So very interesting there. I don't know that we're ever going to actually see it. Leadership review for Mr. Poilievre after losing that election. And so we'll see. I think, didn't they do the same thing to Andrew Scheer and then to Aaron O'Toole, right? I don't know. I think we might be looking at Jason Kenney helmed Conservative Party of Canada, and then Jason Kenney becomes the Conservative Prime Minister. I don't know. I'm just saying. It's one of the things that could happen. Here is Danielle Smith has also been tapped as the next leader of the federal Conservative Party, but I don't know about that. She seems busy fighting the federal government. Pushing back against land acknowledgements. We've got some people who are saying, these land acknowledgements have gone way too far, and I think that that's accurate. And Alberta separation woes. We've got to start with Alberta separation. There's a whole bunch of things going on with regards to it, including all of the premiers pushing back, change of tone with how the premiers are dealing with Danielle Smith. It's nicer, not Dave Eby, but other premiers are saying, we're all going to work together. Doug Ford's kind of walking back his tough rhetoric against Danielle Smith and talking about, leaving the province and leaving the country and stuff. He's walking it back and saying, we're all on the same page. We all want the same thing. And I don't know. I don't know about all that. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Alberta separation. Jeffrey Rath, who's the lawyer who has been quarterbacking this whole push for independent Alberta, and I think he's been going down to the United States to treat with Trump about it as well. He says every Albertan needs to listen to what Premier Smith does not say. She is not taking action to let us have an independent vote this year. She is not promising to end all federal taxes and regulation. She will not let us negotiate with Canada after our independence vote this year. This is not promising to end all transfer payments out of Alberta. She is promising to delay the vote on independence until 2026, when the question of independence can be muddled with a bunch of half options that will ensure that the question won't pass the Clarity Act test. What's the Clarity Act? Great question. We're going to come back to that in a minute. Premier Smith, with respect, you need to let the people of Alberta decide without all of your Team Canada political interference. Premier Smith, please decide whether you're on Team Canada or Team Alberta. You can't be both. And I think that's pretty accurate. This is an interesting turn of events, and I don't know what this means. I really don't. Karen says, okay then, this is likely happening, Mr. Carney, unless you take Alberta seriously and respect their right to a free oil and gas industry. We already know Trump is promising low taxes and better healthcare. Alberta just might be the 51st state that President Trump is looking for. And here's Edmonton CTV, I believe this is. It says Alberta legislature. This is the Canadian Press reporting. Alberta legislature speaker to resign seat and become representative to the United States. So the newly elected Speaker of the House, Nathan Cooper, speaks after being voted in Edmonton on May 21st, 2019. So the Speaker of Alberta is set to resign. So that's interesting, right? And he's going down to talk to Donald Trump. So does that mean that Danielle Smith is now in favor of that? Is that just to keep relations between the United States and Alberta happy and good because it's a lot of money, hundreds of billions of dollars, or $150 billion roughly, right? Who knows? But seems interesting. Here's a CTV news report saying Alberta Premier Smith, quote, will respect the outcome of referendum on separation, says her job is to bring the temperature down. I'm sure it is to bring the temperature down. This is the Clarity Act, and the guys on the Canada Poly chat had this video, and I thought the video was great. It's really, really good. And I had it all queued up, but then I had to work on the screen, so I had to move it. But it is roughly here. So he's talking. This is the same thing that I've got up on the screen here, and I went to the Government of Canada website to grab it, and it's the Clarity Act. And this is an act to give effect to the requirement for clarity as set out in the opinion of the Supreme Court of Canada and the Quebec secession reference. And so this is an opinion of the Supreme Court. This isn't a ruling or anything like that. But these guys go through some very problematic language. If what you want to do is secede, remove yourself from the Canadian governance, and not use the threat of a secession that has no teeth to get a better bargaining position, right? If all you want is to use the threat of secession for a bargaining position, okay, you can do that. But if you actually want to leave, oh, hold on, that's a whole other kettle of fish, right? Like, we're not talking about the same thing anymore. All of the languages, like, Canada can't enter into negotiations that might lead to secession. We can't approve anything that might lead to secession, basically, right? Like, so it's very interesting. These guys go through it, and their skepticism is clear. So I hope it's going to enter. Oh, it's not going to be too fast. Oh, darn. Where is this?
Into negotiations. Can't just leave. Now it's negotiations that might lead to secession.
So once they give you permission to tell them you want to leave, then you get to sit down with them and negotiate the possibility of leaving, which means
Correct.
Think of negotiations with your trade unions or with your 5-year-old granddaughter who says, "Grandpa, I need a donut." What do you do when the government says, "Well, we just won't recognize your referendum. Tough titties. Go back to work, slave"?
Yeah. So, yep. That's basically it. Once you get this referendum done, if you get this referendum done, then you get to negotiate more, right? Here's the preamble to the Clarity Act, and it says, whereas the Supreme Court of Canada has determined that the result of a referendum on the secession of a province from Canada must be free of ambiguity, both in terms of the question asked and in terms of the support it achieves, if that result is to be taken as an expression of the democratic will that would give rise to an obligation to enter into negotiations that might lead to secession. Okay, right? So you do the whole referendum, then you might enter negotiations. But then down here it says, whereas it's incumbent on the Government of Canada not to enter into negotiations that might lead to the cessation of the province of Canada and that could consequently entail the termination of citizenship and rights that the Canadian citizens resident in the province enjoy as full participants of Canada, blah, 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 blah. So on one side, they're saying you'll get a chance to negotiate after you give us this petition that indicates that you want to leave. We'll give you a chance to negotiate. And then further down it says, oh yeah, but also Canada has a vested interest in never negotiating with anybody who wants to secede. So let's figure that all out. And I think that the whole thing is designed to be a poison pill. There will be off-ramps. There will be all sorts of, if you get going, if you have a process and it looks to be successful and you're on the track, well, all of a sudden that person who's doing that just won't get reelected, right, Pierre Poilievre? And then the next person who takes over will come in and will say, oh, well, we've got to, find our footing and things will be great. And then 6 months later, when people are saying, how long does it take to find your footing? They'll say, oh, okay, well, we re-looked at this kind of stuff and this secession stuff doesn't make any sense anymore. It made sense 5 years ago and I supported it 5 years ago, but now it's different. Things are different now and we have to stay in the country, blah, 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 blah. And so like, you can't allow them to take control like this. That's what's going to happen. You're going to get screwed. You're in the process of getting screwed. Here is Keith, and he says, Alberta's citizen-led petitions, including those calling for independence referendum, must be in person and meet strict legal standards set by Elections Alberta. Only officially vetted petitions with the required signatures within 120 days hold weight. Unofficial petitions lack authority. Verify before signing to ensure your voice counts. So you see the pitfalls of this? If they say, listen, I know that this signature here, this last one, I've got 119,000, however many signatures, 200,000. I've got 199,992 signatures here that are definitely verified. We've definitely got it. But these 5 signatures, I can't be sure. I can't be sure. And it's before the 120 days. So Unfortunately, just a hair this time, Alberta, again, right? And so strict. Whereas if I was going to do this, if it was me spearheading this whole thing, I would say we've got 120 days to get all the paperwork aligned, and then we drop that paperwork in Danielle Smith's lap. We action the military who are already on our side and who have seen the military of Alberta, of course, militia, I guess, and who agree with the paperwork, etc., who understand that we have checked all the boxes. We have satisfied the government's proposed criteria, and now we're taking it, and that's that. We are now the government. You are no longer the government, and the militia will escort all RCMP to the border, hand them a copy of the documents, say, give that to the government of Canada. They can be in touch. They'll know our address, and that'll be that. But the way it's going, it's never going to happen. Absolutely never going to happen. Quebec dares to give Alberta separation advice. Quebec, you're still a part of Canada, yo. Like, separation advice? What? Are you kidding me? From a failed, like, if you want to be a successful textilist, or if you want to be a successful something, don't go to a failed something to learn what to do, right? Like, don't say, hey, Quebec, how do you leave Canada? Because you're not going to get good advice because Quebec's still part of Canada. All you're going to get is the roadmap on how to use it as a leverage in a united Canada. That's it. That's all you get, because that's what they do, right? They don't leave Canada. They just bilk Canada for all it's worth, and we all pretended it's okay. I'm not really sure why. Anyway, it's not a good strategy. If you want to be a millionaire, right, and you say, I'm going to go get the advice of somebody who has $100,000, what are you thinking? They're not going to help you. They're not a millionaire. They don't know, right? So, like, he doesn't know. Here we go.
For a long time, you've been talking about trying to separate from Canada. Now we're seeing that out in Alberta. For the people in Alberta who want to separate, do you have any tips for them on how to actually get the job done?
Our success so far does not place me in a position to give them tips about what to do, but I could give them tips about what not to do. Not now. The first idea is to define oneself as a nation. Therefore, it requires a culture of their own. And I am not certain that oil and gas qualify to define a culture. But it's theirs to decide if they want to vindicate the right to self-determination. Would never interfere in that. It belongs to them. I would like us to be the first to do so.
Mr. Blash.
Yeah, right. From the failed separatist has zero advice. Here's Michael. Michael says, Blanchette could have just said, I don't understand Alberta's culture, which would have come as no surprise to any Albertan. This Albertan doesn't understand Quebec's culture, which appears to be based on bad manners, a mangled language, and a grasping, entitled welfare economy. So it's very interesting. True, I don't think that Blanchette has any good advice, nor does he have the experience to give good advice, because, well, as far as the separatist movement goes, it's a failure. Big failure. Anyway, is that rude to point out? Like, I think that it's obvious, right? Anyway, Table Salt says, whoa, something happened. They clearly had a meeting about Alberta. Doug Ford suddenly talking about his great relationship with Danielle Smith and how Albertans have been ignored for 10 years. Please don't leave Alberta. The only way you leave is if you satisfy all the criteria within 120 days, and I think you could do it in 100 days easy with a big drive. You only have, like, what, 4 or 5 million people there, right? Even under 10 million, you can mobilize, no problem. They're terrified that you'll do this. Terrified that you'll do this because it's so doable. Okay, now they're saying, Doug Ford hears you. The Liberal in Ontario hears you, Alberta. Give me a break. Give me a break.
To Toronto, we'll be going out for lunch, so there's not this big rift that everyone's playing out. I just want to support the people of Alberta and Saskatchewan. They've been ignored for a decade now, and I support them. It's as simple as that.
Did the premiers tell her that maybe having a referendum isn't such a great idea against the backdrop of these annexation threats from the United States? You know, you're saying divided we fall.
Yeah.
Is that did the premiers?
No one brought that up. Maybe that comes on a private conversation. But we're all meeting on June the...
He didn't close the door to saying that. He didn't close the door to throwing shade at, maybe don't have a referendum. No, don't have a referendum. Just sit and wait until the package gets dropped in your lap and you get walked out of the Commons building because the new government's taken over. Don't have a referendum. It's okay. We'll take care of it. Alberta. But honestly, he doesn't close the door to that. Honestly. And the guy asking the question sounds like Carl from Phineas and Ferb, the Monograms lieutenant intern guy. The unpaid intern, Carl. Okay. Tamara Litch says, is pointing out what the NDP are saying, and Saskatchewan NDP to introduce anti-separation bill that aims to amend rules. Now, Saskatchewan NDP are not the leading, like they're not the party that's in control of the government in Saskatchewan. It's the Saskatchewan Party, I believe. And so Scott Moe is in charge of that. And I don't think this is going to go anywhere, but it's interesting that the NDP are trying to battle this from within province. Notable anyway, right? And Saskatchewan is kind of hanging out with Alberta, flirting with this whole idea, a little lighter than Alberta, but certainly flirting with it. If Alberta goes, I think Saskatchewan goes. Not very long after. If Alberta goes, Saskatchewan grabs hold of those coattails. Here's Dave Eby. Eby's calling on Premier Smith and Scott Moe to push back strongly on any kind of separatist sentiment. It's not... They're globalists. I mean, Scott Moe maybe to a lesser extent, but if you talk to Mark Friesen, there are people in Saskatchewan who are not strictly happy with the direction of Scott Moe's taking things. He's allowing gender ideology into the schools. There's a lot of weird things going on in Scott Moe's jurisdiction, right? So I don't know about if Scott Moe is for separation, or if he's a globalist, or if he's just somebody who's got his eyes closed to how what really is in play on the board at this point in time, right? I think there's a story you could tell yourself, like politics is similar to how it was in 2000, and it's not anymore, right? But you could govern that way if you really want to close your eyes, but it's not. It's very, very different. Like the difference between before COVID and after COVID, things are really different, I think. Here's Dave Eby talking about all of this, and sorry, my point was to say that the government is not representative of the people. The government is not going to be helping the people with separation. Scott Moe is not in charge of this. He's an agent to manage it and make sure it doesn't happen, right? He would be a spoiling agent. I don't think he would be somebody to help the citizens achieve what they want. No, he represents the government, and he works within a united Canada. And if Saskatchewan is independent, then Scott Moe's out of a job. I don't think he's the one to charter running Saskatchewan independent, or the governor of Saskatchewan if it becomes a state, right? Unless he's championing becoming the 52nd state after Alberta. But I don't think we're seeing that either. I think we'd see, if Alberta and Saskatchewan go, we'd see a larger state of Alberta. Anyway, here's Dave Eby.
I understand. You've got a couple of conservative premiers in Saskatchewan and Alberta. Their preferred candidate was not successful in the federal election. They have strong bases of support for the Conservatives in those provinces. They're navigating tricky waters. But I certainly encourage them all, Premier Smith, Premier Moe, and I believe that they're on board for this, to work together for the good of the country, to hold the country together, and to push back strongly on any kind of separatist sentiment. When a Conservative MLA here tweeted out a separatist image of Western Canada approvingly, and that we would become a protectorate of the United States, I didn't hesitate to point out how dumb that was. And I think he recognized how dumb it was. He said he was texting while he was driving, which is also dumb. Take the moment to defend our country, take the moment to stand together.
God. I called him dumb. Here, do you see these finger guns? They're fully loaded finger guns, okay? Dave Eby, give me a break. Are you kidding me? How our politicians are like Kleenexes when you need a napkin, Like, this is not going to cut it. Sheila Copps is responding to Keith. Keith is talking about Indigenous rights, and the play for Alberta is any way we can spoil this, any way we can put a fly in this ointment, any way we can do anything to stop this or derail this, we'll do it. And so there are Indigenous chiefs who are coming out. Here's an Indigenous chief. He says Alberta's Bill 54, which would lower the signature threshold for referendums, including the one on separation, was thrown on the ground and called garbage at a press conference in West Edmonton this afternoon. Chiefs say separation violates treaties, so they're having a big temper tantrum, and they're attacking it from the premiers. They're attacking it from First Nations. Okay, they're terrified you're going to do this. They're terrified you're going to become the truckers. They're terrified you're all going to go to each other's houses, have meetings, sign papers, record it, maybe have videos of it, have evidence that is absolutely ironclad that they cannot dispute, and you're going to do this, and they're going to be left standing there looking like effing idiots. They're terrified of it, Alberta. I'm telling you, they're terrified. And they're going to do everything they can to convince you that, no, it doesn't matter. It's fine. Leave if you want to, right? They're terrified. Terrified. Just look at what they're doing. All actions, all channels are active at this point in time to counter this, okay? Everything they've got, they're putting against this. Alberta separation, Keith says, and First Nations rights explained. All eligible Alberta voters can vote in an independence referendum, including members of First Nations. One person, one vote. Our elections are rigged. Anyway, I digress. No special treatment for members of First Nations regarding voting in the referendum. 2, upon successful vote for separation, the province of Alberta, First Nations within Alberta, other provinces, and the government of Canada are obliged to engage in good faith negotiations to establish the terms of Alberta separation. 3, Alberta First Nations would have the following options at a minimum to determine their post-separation status. A, their reserved lands to remain owned by Canada, with treaties still administered by the government of Canada. Status quo, nothing changes. B, request that the new government of Alberta assume the responsibility of the government of Canada under existing treaties. Only material change is which government administers the treaties. Or C, negotiate a new framework agreement with Alberta to replace and modernize the existing treaties. 4, importantly, the First Nations themselves would decide which option to pursue as part of the secession negotiations, but they do not have a veto on whether Alberta separates. 5, as confirmed in the map below, the government of Alberta owns almost all of the land and the oil and gas within Alberta, resulting from the 1930 Natural Resources Transfer Agreement. So Alberta is capable of doing this according to the law if you talk to Keith, but if you talk to Sheila Copps, she says no. First Nation lands inside the boundaries of Alberta cannot be negotiated away. Treaty rights supersedes referendum votes, just like the Rockies cannot be negotiated away because they belong to all Canadians. So I think she's incorrect, and Keith and her go back and forth on it, and I think she loses, really. Here is Mark Carney, and he's saying in French, a whole lot longer than in English, that Canada is stronger when we work together. He's asked about Alberta separation, and he kind of diminishes it and says, we're stronger when we work together. Here we go.
Canada is stronger when we work together. As an Albertan, I firmly believe that. You can always ask a question, but I know what I would respond clearly.
So there you go. Elbows up, he would say. That's how he would respond. How dour. Here's Elections Canada, and they said, I heard that, well, it says fake or fact, right? Fake election or factual election, I guess. And Elections Canada says, I heard that. Some people say, I saw someone write that there's a lot of inaccurate information circulating about elections, for example, about non-citizens voting, ballot boxes not being secured, or pencils being used to change votes. Use Elections Canada to find out the accurate information about inaccurate narratives that are circulating. Share the facts, not the rumors. All the facts are just one click away. What? They are the ones. Sheila Gunn-Reid says, you guys admitted you lost track of almost 900 ballots in one riding. The Remanded, who's been watching the BC election, says the record for lost ballots is 861 in Prince George Mackenzie. They take first place ribbons, so those lost 822 ballots take second place in BC. So the misinformation that they're claiming is not actually misinformation. It's real information. Here's Sheila Gunn-Reid again. Elections Canada admits to mishandling 822 ballots from 74 ridings across the country. The ballots were never counted. Why? They were left sitting in a returning office in Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam. So that's pretty interesting. Under the Canada Elections Act, these ballots needed to arrive at headquarters by April 28th at 6 p.m. They didn't, so now they're legally void. Hundreds of Canadians cast votes that were automatically discarded. Elections Canada says the issue was caused by human error and a failure to follow basic procedures. No kidding. They claim after their own analysis that the outcome in any of the 74 affected ridings wouldn't have changed, but let's be real. Why should Canadians trust the same officials who botched it in the first place? Chief Election Officer Stéphane Perreault has now asked for a review of the process, but the damage is done. Ballots were binned, voters were disenfranchised, and accountability is MIA. Yep, absolutely. This is exactly why public trust in Elections Canada is slipping. If they can't count ballots properly here, why? What else and where else are they screwing up? Yeah, I don't have any kind of faith in our institutions. Our institutions are clearly being used to manage us and not being used to maximize our ability to develop our natural resources, reduce our monthly costs for the country, get spending under control. Like we're not doing anything that makes any kind of sense. It's like coming home and finding that your basement's flooding and running up to the attic and opening windows. You're like, what are you doing? What? How is that helpful? It's not, right? And it doesn't matter. We're doing it anyway. And also, when we open up those windows, we're throwing our money out as well. Here is this guy, and this is Vigilant Fox talking about rigged elections. It's 6 minutes, and this guy's, it's broken down into 1 minute clips. And Vigilant Fox says, Victor Davis Hanson just shattered the media's favorite lie about Trump. For years, they've used fake polls to manipulate public opinion and crush his momentum. But Hanson didn't just say the polls were wrong. He showed they were rigged by design. Polling is now just a weapon used to suppress Trump's base and supercharge Democrat funding. And once you hear the evidence, you'll never trust another mainstream poll again. Do you trust mainstream polls now? No, but they were unbelievably accurate in the Canadian election because the Canadian election is also rigged. Okay, that's why. Lately, the media has been pushing a familiar narrative. Trump is tanking in the polls, but Victor Davis Hanson says the story doesn't hold up. And once you see what's behind the numbers, it starts to look a lot more like propaganda than polling. So this is the one, this is where he kind of pulls the curtain back and says what they're doing. Here's just a minute of this. What they're doing is they're oversampling Democrats and taking the results from Trump, from the election and the polls in the election, and undersampling Trump supporters, thus giving them a different overall picture.
So what were the pollsters trying to tell us? Or were they trying to manipulate us? And I think it's the latter. Larry Kudlow, for example, the former Fox business, I think he still is at Fox, he pointed out that when he examined the New York Times and the Washington Post polls, they were deliberately not counting people who surveyed that they were Trump voters in 2024. That was half the country. They were only polling about a third. Think of that. A third of the people that said they voted for Trump, they polled, not half. So of course their results were going to be disputed or suspect. But here's another thing. There were analyses after each of the 2016, the 2020, and the 2024 elections about the accuracy of polls post facto the election. And we learned that they were way off in 2016. They said they had learned their lessons. They were way off in 2020. They said they learned their lesson. And they were way off in 2024.
Yep. But in Canada, it didn't look like they were way off. In fact, it was a banner year for pollsters. They said, we're unbelievably accurate. We're so successful. We're so accurate. Pat us on the back. Pretty wild stuff. Here is, this is Elections Canada responding to people asking questions about this. Northern Folk says, after hearing the longest ballot committee scumbags on running 200 plus candidates in Battle River, Crowfoot, Alberta by-election, which Poilievre will be running in, I called Elections Canada to ask what they planned on doing about it. The short answer is nothing, and people say, why? Why are you planning on doing nothing? And here's the answer. Hello, Canadians are not required to pay a deposit or a fee to run in federal elections. Any potential candidate that has fulfilled all conditions for candidacy will have their name included on the ballot. Only Canadian citizens over the age of 18 can become candidates. And they continue, the Chief Electoral Officer has previously outlined his concerns over the impact of a higher than usual number of candidates on the accessibility of the ballot with the Procedure and House Affairs Committee. A change to the law would require an act of Parliament. So Carney would have to change the law in order to do that. And so what are you going to do, right? Darn shucks. Can't make any changes now. The die is cast, right? We're already doing this. And an update from Chinese interference in the 25 election. Candidate Joe Tay has a bunch of his relatives arrested in Hong Kong. Hong Kong Democracy Council says pro-CCP media report a cousin of Joe Tay and the cousin's wife have been detained for interrogation by national security police in Hong Kong. Tay was one of 6 overseas Hong Kongers for whom arrest warrant and bounties were issued in December 24. He was a candidate in the Canadian elections. Since those arrest warrants and bounties in December 24, 13 relatives and associates of the 4 of the 6 overseas Hong Kongers targeted have been detained for interrogation in Hong Kong. These are the first relatives of Tay known to have been detained. During the Canadian elections, Tay's initial opponent encouraged others to collect the Hong Kong police bounty on him. Canadian intelligence also identified an online repression campaign against him. Now, in all, at least 44 family members are known to have been detained by national security police in Hong Kong in connections with the arrest warrants and bounties for 19 overseas Hong Kongers issued in 3 batches starting in July 23. Pretty crazy stuff, if you ask me, right? Like, that's pretty wild. Election interference, etc. We've got, man, I was hoping to get to the end of governance. Like there was a story that I wanted to mention that I thought was pretty interesting that I wanted on the free show, but I can't remember what it is now. So, but we're already at 30 minutes. And so I think I'm going to call it. We're going to kill the stream. So thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great one. We'll see you tomorrow. And a quick reminder that I'm going to be off for a week starting Sunday. So sorry about that, but it is what it is. I have to take some time off sometimes, but I'll be back with more stories after that. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful